evening, everybody. Thanks for the few of you who showed up tonight. And I hope this will be a really good presentation on where we are with the Shasta River TMDL and the progress that we've made since the TMDL was approved by the Regional Water Board. So I'm going to introduce Clayton Krieger. He's staff of the North Coast Regional Water Quality Control Board, and he will be our master of ceremonies tonight. So we've got some great presentations, and I hope you enjoy.
Thanks, Adrian. I'm just here helping Andy out because I've been doing a lot of work in the basin. For example, last week I was up in Klamath Falls with the Klamath Watershed Partnership with a group of landowners, 25 to 30 landowners, and we traveled up and down the Keno Reach. And many of the ranchers owned land along the Keno Reach, and some had undertaken restoration projects on their own, and we were looking at those. And we were actually on the water, and so we tried to have what they call the scientists, including myself, in each boat with 4 to 5 landowners, and we spent the day going up and down the Keno Reach, learning from each other. It was a fabulous day, and for many of them, they had grown up on that portion of the river, and for many of them, they hadn't been on the water, seen it from their ranches from the water side for over 20 years. And so it was a day well spent, and we hope to show today that we've been learning as we go here. And this is not just about the TMDL, because you'll see a lot of successes here by people who are working under other auspices, but it's all about the success that we've been having and in terms of improving conditions for the fish. And we hope to cover that through a series of presentations tonight, but each person is prepared to stop at any moment and take questions and provide more background information as needed. And so with that, we were going to start out with what we consider to be one of our most successful projects that Lisa Unkefer has been working on, and Lisa's going to provide some background information on the tailwater engineering projects that she's done. I'm going to be sitting up here doing the slides because our remote doesn't work, and I apologize. We tried to get the automatic screen is refusing to be automatic tonight, and so it's a little darker, and so that's why we asked you to move forward. We have to project onto the wall tonight. So can everybody see that all right? Okay. All right. Lisa, do you want to?
Sure.
And
thank you, Clayton. So most of you know who I am. I think everyone I've either met or worked with. Lisa Unkefer for Aquaterra Consulting. I've been working on the Shasta Valley Tailwater Reduction Project for about 7 years now. And it's been a long haul. We've had lots of projects and lots of progress, and so that's what I'm here to share with you, is what we've done, what we're going to do a little bit, and what we're finding. So that's right. So most of you know this, so I'm not gonna nail this too much. But why are we focusing on tailwater? You can hit the button. Most of you already know this. So the Shasta River was listed by EPA for impaired organic enrichment in DOT in DO, which is dissolved oxygen, in 92, and elevated temperatures in 94. And because of that, the North Coast Regional Water Quality Control Board identified tailwater returns as one of the 5 primary factors contributing to elevated temperatures in the Shasta River. And low DO and high temperatures negatively affect spawning and reproduction of many of the salmon species that are using the Shasta River as their home. So we can move to the next slide. What is tailwater? Most of you know that. I'm not going to go into that too much. We'll just move on. So in 2006, the RCD received for grant funding this Prop 4050 money that they received from the Regional Water Quality Control Board, or the state, actually. And we completed that project at the end of 2011. And part of that project was doing a tailwater model, creating criteria and prioritization criteria, prioritizing the entire valley for tailwater impacts, and then also doing a lot of implementation projects. They also receive funding from 319H, which is federal money, but it's still run through the state, to do more of the same. Refinement, identifying more projects, implementing more projects. And so we are currently working under that grant, and we will be until the end of this year. And we've completed 4 implementation projects so far, and we have 2 more that are planned for this year. So in the process, I'm not going to go into this too much, but it's kind of where we've been. One of them was creating a model to prioritize neighborhoods. And we did that in the winter of 2009. And we did that with also Fish and Wildlife, our Department of Fish and Game actually at the time had some grant funding because the state funds that we had from water quality had been frozen. And so to kind of fill that gap, we also had partners, we made partners with Fish and Wildlife, and they helped us finish a lot of the modeling. We did a lot of outreach and monitoring, and then we identified and scored projects. So some of the landowners in this room and many others out there all participated in the Tailwater Advisory Committee, and they came and we met probably, I don't know, maybe 10 times and created criteria to not only prioritize impacts, but also how do we prioritize projects and make sure they're in alignment with where we want to go in the valley. You could probably put up the next. So what we ended up coming up with is this map. It's color coded. Red areas are high priority. The orange, it's kind of hard to tell on this wall because it's orange, but this area right in here is the high priority. This is medium priority, and this is more lower priority areas. And it doesn't mean that we don't think tailwater in those areas is important or that it's not creating an impact. It's just kind of starting from the top up. And what we found was that, tailwater returns coming back to a river or receiving water that's colder and has a lot less flow has a greater impact. So that's basically what the criteria stipulated. So, forward. So the elements that contribute to tailwater production impacts, a big one is the water year. How much winter and spring precipitation we have. Also, how much, there's especially in the upper watershed where we have high priority neighborhoods, a big element is how much water is stored and drained out. It contributes to some of the spring flows and also the prior rights water that's being released to the river. Air temperatures are a big element in tailwater impacts. And like I said, receiving water, the flow and temperature of that water, irrigation management, vegetative cover. And what I mean by that is more like grazing management. So if I found through monitoring, if a pasture is really heavily grazed and there's only a little bit of, like really short grass, that tailwater that comes off of that field is going to be a lot hotter than a pasture that's really mildly grazed and the grasses are able to grow longer and shade the water as it goes across the field. And then ground saturation, that's really is affected by not the duration of the rotations, but how quickly the rotations occur. If the ground is really saturated, then there could be more runoff, and also if it's really dry, there could be more runoff. So it could go either way. So I said that air temperature was a pretty big factor, and it's hard to tell on a wall this color, but what I wanted to just show is we started this project, the monitoring, in 2008. And probably the best year for temperature, it's kind of hard to identify this. And this isn't like the daily temperatures, because of course there's fluctuations. And these are only the 7-day average daily maximum temperatures that we're using here for air. And all the charts I'm going to show you today, except for maybe the last few, is that metric, because discussing that with the regional board, they were like, well, that's really kind of what we're looking at is the maximum for a 7-day average. So just wanted to bring this up. 2009, like the hardest part in the valley, or the hottest time, is July, August throughout. So I usually just look at that. You can tell in the spring, yeah, it's hot. The temperatures are okay. But this is the time when tailwater is the hottest. That's when the salmon sometimes are having the hardest time. So 2011, we had a real dip in hot temperatures. In 2010, the temperatures at the end of the season really dropped, but they're higher in the middle of the hot time. And also in 2009. Oh, yep. And I said water year, river discharge. So you can see 2011, that's the green line that's kind of flowing at the top. And this is just average, this is the average daily discharge at the Montague Weir. So all the other years, 2008, 2010, 2012, the flows are about the same. There's not, especially during July and August, they're all about the same. 2011, we had a pretty good water year. There's a lot more water in the system, really throughout the year. Dwinell storage, 2011, again, the storage in Dwinell was much higher than the other years. 2010 was probably more of an average year for Dwinell, and then the other years, like 2008 was a hard year, and 2012 is kind of mid-range. So in 2011, we finished 6 projects, and this is just the funding from the Prop 4050 money, the grant that was completed in 2011. And we did 6 different projects, and we're going to kind of go through these, but I wanted to show you these bubbles are the bubbles that are in there in red. They're the locations of those projects. So the first project I want to talk about was Hidden Valley Ranch, and this isn't a high priority. This is one of the ranches that's in the high priority area for tailwater impacts. We did a couple pipelines and a riparian fence. So pre-construction, they had an open ditch system. They have really sandy soils, and so they were losing a lot of water. They used some spring water to irrigate. They also have a prior rights from Dwinell that's stored in Dwinell. So we thought, well, if we increase efficiency, then they'll use less water. And so what we found, you can hit the next button.
Sorry.
So pre-construction, off of this one neighborhood, remember I was talking about neighborhoods, identifying neighborhoods, we have this Bunkhouse neighborhood, and it's a fairly large tailwater neighborhood, and the neighborhood means it's just the geographical area that the floodwater is running off to and returning at a single point. So we did monitor pre and post project. So pre-construction, it might be hard to see that writing, but it's it produced 465 acre feet throughout the season. So for the whole season, 464 acre feet of tailwater. After the project, you can hit the next button. We monitored 126 acre feet. So a big difference by putting the pipeline in. And if anyone has any questions, you can stop my rambling. Go for it. Next one.
Lisa?
Yeah.
They have about the same production?
Yeah, I think that that would have been a really interesting add-on is to do some transects across the field to find out the production, if it's gone down or if it stayed the same. My understanding is that their production has gone up. They've been able to irrigate pastures for a longer period of time that they had never had, water access to. So the production, the duration has lasted a lot longer. Yeah. So we also put a pipeline on the west side. In pre-project, the production was, yeah. So this, they only actually had 26 acre feet. And so afterward, it was 136 acre feet. So you might go, that doesn't really pencil out, does it? And Lori and I worked on this project together, and partially what I think one of the issues is this pasture has really short runs. They were really unsure how to manage their pipeline. They were still running sets the same length that they were running when it was an open ditch. I think probably would find that that's going to get better as they learn how to operate the system a little bit more. And a big part of this is that ditch, because of the sandy soils, they were losing most of their water in the ditch before it could even get to the pastures. So now with the pipeline, there's actually water for them to irrigate. So I'm gonna go on a limb and say that their production on this pasture is probably improved drastically because a lot of the pasture was not getting any water at all. So there we go. These are all our lessons. We did a riparian fencing, and this was with some matching funds from U.S. Fish and Wildlife
Hey,
Service.
Lisa, I was just thinking, you know, it would be nice, you could use some remote sensing data that's done annually to kind of get out the extent in terms of benefit production.
Yeah, like
Even after
seaball.
the fact.
Like
yeah.
seaball, yeah.
Right.
That's an expensive thing to do, and it's definitely something we thought about. But
Yeah.
yeah, maybe down the road we can do that.
I think
for
there's
sure.
some free stuff, some NAEPs, I think we'll probably get to it, that's free.
Okay, great. So this was an interesting fencing project, and then they were really flexible with the buffer. And they had some, this is on that same pasture that we did the Westside pipeline. And so I had encouraged them to give us as much buffer as possible so we could see if, you know, having a really extensive riparian buffer zone would help with filtering any tailwater that might come back or reducing the temperature. Also just shading this stretch of the river, which was pretty, I think, pretty imperative. So
Was that an exclusion fence?
it's an exclusion fence, yeah. So looking, you can hit the forward button. So just want to look at temperatures a little bit, and I'm not going to go into this in great detail, but that green line, so you can see that the temperatures, the numbers over on the left-hand side, those are in Celsius. And for fish, they generally like it below like 18 degrees, right? At least that's what we're told. The green line is in 2011, we had a great water year. Storage was up in Dwinell, so maybe the water quality coming out of Dwinell was a better quality. But also, they had a spring that they were releasing that this station was just below their spring outlet because they had a lot of water and they were releasing the water back to the river. So temperatures in the river in 2011 were well below 20. Now these are the same 7-day average daily running maximum temperatures. In 2011 and 2012, though they're back up, they bounce up above 25. So I think a big thing that's affecting this is with plain water year, how much water they had available, and also we did the construction project in 2011, so they were shutting their irrigation off so that we could do construction activities. So that is what that lower green line is. It's kind of a, yeah, misleading. And then downstream, this is downstream of both of all the Hidden Valley projects that we did. In 2011, you'll see that red line that's along the bottom. That is 2011. So still, the temperatures you're showing that they're much lower than the other 3 years that we monitored there, but still above 20 and higher than what we saw on the upstream side. So that there's still an impact that's associated, but also could just be solar gain in that reach as well. So the next project I'm going to show you is on the Meander Ranch. It's a pipeline, and Don, who's here, had an open ditch, and he would pump to it and then flood out of the open ditch. So we put a pipeline in, a buried main line with risers, and gave a pipe. You can hit the button. Before, you produce 45 acre feet, and after 30 acre feet. And there's been an add-on since this, and so this, and I'll show it to you later, but there'll be basically zero tailwater production.
This is tailwater runoff?
This is tailwater runoff, yeah, in acre feet.
So far this year, we've collected, I think it's 30 acre feet
Yeah,
this year, mid-season, that we've actually recycled.
yeah. And so there was an add-on to this project that we just did this year with Tailwater 2 funds, and that was, Don had a pond that he had built, and so we gave him this pipeline, and then we also put a standpipe, excuse me, at night. And now that water that's collected in the pond runs back to his pump. So in lieu of his river diversion, he's pumping tailwater. So anything that we'd monitored, this 30 acre feet, he's pumping it entirely back up into his irrigation system. So that'll be a zero use.
I'd be really surprised if it wasn't more than that.
Yeah.
That's the sensors you had in the ditch. down to the river.
That's right, yeah, and also think it really depends on the water year and,
Mhm.
you know, and your management, obviously, yeah. Blair, did you have a question?
Yeah, in this scenario and the one you had before, where there's water savings, what happened to the extra water? It was saved, the 15 acre feet.
The 15 acre feet, and then also you're talking about in Hidden Valley, that, well, I know in Hidden Valley, they told me they were able to maybe irrigate better on a few other fields that they hadn't been able to irrigate better in the past.
So is there any actual water that's actually dedicated back in the stream?
No. No. None of these projects have had a water dedication. But our criteria does have a, like, if a landowner is willing to dedicate, they would get like a huge bonus point. But right now, we're just looking at how do we reduce the tailwater impacts. Yeah.
Well, just to follow up on that.
Yeah.
If Don didn't pump out of the river, that would have been in-stream savings, and that may or may not have been documented.
That's right, it's not documented, but that, basically this 30 acre feet that was going back as hot tailwater is now going back into his irrigation system instead of 30 acre feet that is getting pumped out of the river. So even though it's not dedicated, and I don't know if we could dedicate it, because that 30 acre feet would be going back to the river anyway. So, yeah.
Adrian, if you just hit the up button until it stops.
There's a question back there.
Yeah.
Are there any domestic wells in this area? And with the pipelines and things, have you documented anybody's well having less water in it or more water or anything like that?
Most of the projects that we've done are in pretty close proximity to the river, and so there aren't many wells in between the pipelines and the wells.
Okay, thank you.
We did one project in the Shasta Water Association where we replaced some head gates and replaced some laterals. So you can show them. Go ahead. Pre-construction 78 acre feet of tailwater coming back, and after construction 25. And now keeping in mind too that this is from that like in the association, because it's a larger area that's contributing tailwater. This is only monitoring at one location where tailwater is coming back to the river, where maybe this neighborhood might actually be contributing tailwater to a couple different places, and so we can't always monitor every single location where tailwater comes back. So this is kind of just showing an approximation, so that should also be said. So just downstream of the Meander and the Shasta Water Association projects, again, 2011, these temperatures are a little lower than the rest. 2010 though, you'll see before the project. Now this also is due to air temperatures and also water year, whatever was happening during July. It's really hard to piece apart like, oh, did the project do this, or is there some other aspect or element in the environment that's creating the change? But 2010, that green line at the top, temperatures are higher than 2012, which is the blue line in July, which is a bit lower. But like I said, could be many factors contributing to that. Okay. We did a project on the Lemus Ranch. They had a pond that they were using, and we wanted to help them better utilize the water that was being stored there, and so that they could use their stored tailwater instead of their river diversion. So we put a new pipeline in to bring the water back up to the top of their field and irrigate another pasture. Okay. Before project 47 acre feet, after project 15 acre feet. So, and it's a substantial reduction in tailwater that's being returned. Now on this ranch, the tailwater is returned to what used to be the old Lewis ditch and does go to another landowner that's downstream. And so another landowner is actually able to utilize that 15 acre feet. And Rick, do you want to add anything, how the project might be working for you, or?
No, it works real good, and I think that was monitored. The 15 acre feet was 2011,
It was the year after, the 15 acre feet was monitored last year,
12.
2012.
12.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think most of that was one time, I think we had like a rain, or I don't remember now. I know we were shut down, we weren't even irrigating, and a lot of runoff comes, there's 3 different drains and drains down into
That's
there.
right.
And that's when most of that, because during the irrigation season, there was hardly any runoff out of the tailwater
Yeah,
pond there.
Definitely.
There wasn't, I mean, it didn't hardly, but that one year, there was like a week or something, I don't remember if it rained or something happened, and we were shut down, we weren't even irrigating, and so it wasn't really actually on tailwater.
yeah, yeah. Again, water years and environmental factors, yeah.
One thing I wanted to ask you, it's like the tailwater reduction on my project, and especially now that first year we're getting to reuse the tailwater
Yeah.
back to the pump, and any tailwater coming down none of it's getting to the river. It's all going stored and then used by the pump on the river. And like Rick's there, they're saying it's like it's going into Lewis ditch, so it's minimally getting back to the stream. It's getting reused again.
That's right.
But those other ones you showed the reduction in tailwater, which was a positive change. But the tailwater that's still left there, is that going back into the river?
It is going back to the
Yeah,
river.
so that's the difference between those and mine. Mine doesn't go back to the river.
That's right.
It's collected and fed to the pump.
Yeah, and I think that that's where working with landowners that have pumps versus gravity, like you're really,
Able to-
you're pumping that water back
Yeah,
up, where
able
a lot of some of the landowners that we showed, they're using gravity and they don't have a
Right,
pumping
don't have a way of
system.
getting it back.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so just downstream of the Lima, still 2011, those temperatures in July look better. Just simply water year. And 2012, though, that same dip in temperature as opposed to 2010, which is the green line at the top. So an improvement. If it's just the tailwater projects, by showing this, I'm not at all saying that the tailwater projects are the only aspect that's affecting river temperatures, because there's a lot of other things that have happened in the valley too in this time period. Okay. We changed a head gate structure on the Big Springs Ranch, Shasta Big Springs Ranch. They share their diversion with a neighboring property owner, and they don't always know how much water they're going to get at their property line. And so what would happen is the irrigator would have their rotation all set in the middle of the night. He'd think everything was fine. He'd come back the next morning, he'd have maybe double at the property line than what he had his irrigation set for. And so there would be a lot more production in tailwater because of it. So there was this red head gate structure, which was a return ditch back to Big Springs Creek that Fish and Game put in. And so we wanted to kind of capitalize that there was a ditch returning water that could return water back to the river if need be. So what we did, so before they were producing 147 acre feet of tailwater, and afterward was 55 acre feet. So you can see what we did is we put a new head structure, a concrete head wall in their ditch, and then here we put a broad crested weir that they can adjust, so that if flow in the ditch goes over what they have their rotation set for, any excess will go back to the creek. And this is TNC's property, and so they have been working on their 1707 to make this very legitimate. It is, it could have created issues, maybe the neighboring landowners could scream harm or whatever. So this is kind of set up with their future 1707 in mind.
Lisa?
Yeah.
The head gate feeds TNC,
Yes.
and the overflow there under that walkway
Goes back to the creek.
creek.
Mhm. And the water temperature here is still very cold, so it's more beneficial to allow the cold water to go directly back to the creek than go through their irrigation system and end up as tailwater.
Too much water.
Too much water, yeah. Okay. And it's kind of hard to differentiate, if the project was a benefit or not, because they haven't really been using it to its full capacity because of the waiting on the 1707 process, but wanted to show you the temperatures anyway. And this is the second component of the Meamber tailwater project. So this is the same ranch that we put the pipeline in. This is Don's Pond down at the bottom, and that concrete structure right here where the excavator is, that's the new sump, and so, or not sump, but a standpipe. So the tailwater flows into that, and then is directed back to his river pump for reuse. So basically, you can hit that. So basically, will result in 0 acre feet coming back to the river. Okay. We just finished another efficiency project on the Freeman Ranch. That was finished in March, I think. They produced 101 acre feet, and we're monitoring yet this season to see. This will be the first year post-project monitoring to see how that pipeline did. But basically, it's buried mainline in risers with hydrants and gated pipe.
So is it overflow valves and pipeline replacing a ditch?
Yes, he had open ditches. Mm-hmm. But he is pumping. He pumps from the river up
Right.
to open ditches.
Mhm.
Okay. We did a ditch lining project on the Emerson Ranch, on the hole in the ground ranch. They had some stretches of concrete lined ditch that were pretty leaky, and
Oops, sorry.
and so we just kind of went along. Tim Beck helped a lot on this project, and also worked with the irrigator and the ranch manager to identify certain stretches that they knew were very problematic for them, and so they replaced those.
I thought that looked like Tim's cowboy hat.
That's Tim's cowboy hat. I like that picture. Yeah. Okay. And so in 2013, we're going to do a project on the Cook Ranch down on Brasita Lane, where we're going to reuse water that comes off the Shasta Water Association, and in lieu of their own river pumping. And then we're going to do a pickup ditch within the Shasta Water Association to dump tailwater from like 5 different neighborhoods and dump it back into the Shasta Water Association pump station. So that will be basically an in lieu of project using tailwater instead of river water. Okay. I just wanted to show you, just like people might go, well, if things improving, are conditions improving in the river? I mean, there's been a lot of work. Some dams have come out. People are fencing. They're doing efficiency projects now. Show me the money, basically. And I think these graphs are pretty interesting. So this graph that I'm showing right here is 2008 data of tailwater, of river temperature, and also dissolved oxygen. The green, very squiggly line, this is showing actual raw data. So the green line, which is the most impressive, is dissolved oxygen. You'll see that we want dissolved oxygen to be greater, and it's dropping below 5. And this is in 2008. So Clayton, can you hit the button? And this is in 2010. That same green line, we're no longer brushing up against 5. We're more up 6, 7. So the conditions are improving. It's slow. I mean, it's 4 years, but the DO conditions, dissolved oxygen conditions, are definitely improving. And you'll also see the red line throughout, basically, especially in July, the diurnal fluctuation, meaning the temperature fluctuation between night and day, is much tighter, which is what we ultimately would like to see, too. So, okay. The same illustration at the Montague Weir, 2008. The green is the dissolved oxygen, and you'll see that it's dropping down, around 5. And here in 2012, it's staying like around 6 or 7. So that's a marked improvement. Same thing, Aruja dam site, 2008, dissolved oxygen is dropping way below 4, especially in July. You see that it's kind of consistently going below 4 parts per million. If you hit the next slide, 2012, It's not, it's staying, it's kind of, it might bounce down, like we had one time in July and that it bounced down below 4, but otherwise it's staying above 4. And in the late part of the season, it's staying way above 4. And this is down in the bottom of the lower end of the valley. Lisa?
Does water years have effect on the dissolved oxygen?
It
Like
does.
2008 was a drought year, and 2012 was a average year.
Yeah, it probably would, but when I look at like 2009 data through 2010, there's just like a slow kind of improvement. 2011 dissolved oxygen, I mean, I can't say exactly from memory, but it's not actually that different than what we're seeing now as far as trending upward. Yeah.
So, Lisa, if I could comment on that. You know, in terms of the dissolved oxygen, there are several factors that affect that. There's the temperature, but also the amount of organic material that, you know, those tailwater return flows, that's oxygen consuming material. And so the tailwater projects have an effect on dissolved oxygen in 2 ways, and that's why we may be seeing a clearer and more dramatic signal, is because it reduces the amount of organic matter that's put into the river and and somewhat of an improved temperature. The water can hold more oxygen as it's colder. So
Yeah.
we consider this a real success. I mean, we consider this improvements that are related to the work that's being done.
Thanks.
We being the
Clarifying.
regional water.
Yeah, and I mean, I just want to stipulate that the funds that we're using to do these projects, you know, state funded, so we have to report pre and post project monitoring and show, has this been a benefit or not? And I think that this is really something, I'm not necessarily hanging my hat and saying, oh, we can all just do whatever and everything's going to keep on improving. I can't say that, but I think showing this, it does illustrate that dissolved oxygen levels are improving in the river, and that is, I think that is something to cheer about. Yeah. And I think that might be my last slide. Yeah. And I just wanted to say a lot of the projects that I showed you, I also worked in concert with Lori Bundy at NRCS and really appreciated all of her hard work and dedication to getting designs out the door and working with landowners. And it was really good to team up and partner with NRCS. So, does anyone have any questions?
In the grand scheme of things, when you report to the water board and the resource, the state resource control board, what are their impressions, and are they happy with the results of the work that's been done, and how does that affect the newer regulations that they keep imposing on people? I mean, are they gonna back off the regulations a little bit, or are they gonna keep pounding us, or?
I think they
I'm gonna
have
cover
to.
some of that.
I think they have to speak to it. As far as I know, that they're happy that we're making progress and that people are participating with the the tailwater reduction project. And that as long as people are participating, then they're feeling good about that. But I think Andy's gonna talk about that more.
I'll touch on that, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Does anyone else have questions? Yeah, Don?
Yeah, like the Prop 50 money that you use on my project and these others, do you, or does the regional board could you tell me how many different agencies those grants pass through? Because I went it was a week ago, I've got some Churchill relatives over in Butte Valley, and I went to a family reunion last Saturday, a week ago, and this one lady, she works in the California State Department of Public Health, and when I was talking to her several months ago, she said my project went across her desk. Does that
Yeah,
make
there's
sense?
a lot, I mean,
You mean the funding went across her desk?
Well, I'm not sure exactly how she put that.
the permitting and everything, it's,
Yeah, we had to.
I had no idea that
Probably,
state public health found
we had to permit your project, and by permitting, we also had to do a CEQA process, and so we send out like a notification to all the agencies that could possibly want to review your project. And so your project was kind of lumped in with all of the other projects that were included in our secret document. So
Okay.
that might be,
Yeah.
maybe that's what she means. Yeah,
Archaeology, everything.
yeah. Any other questions? And if you picked up one of these, just to give you a little, this is kind of this schematic of how projects are identified and screened. So if you're in a high priority area and you have a project, or if you're not in a high priority area, if you're anywhere, you might want to see like what are the criteria that we're looking at and scoring to identify if a project is going to move into project implementation. And then on the back, there's also a little map of the high priority and medium priority and low priority areas. So, okay.
And I can speak to great, oh, sorry. To speak to the question a little bit about how we feel about this work, the Regional Water Board, we believe it is making progress, and we have, our funding source is the 319H, it's the non-point source grants, and we really get very little to distribute across our entire region, and Shasta is a funding priority region, and you guys are going to be receiving about 60-70% of our 319H to continue the work that the good work that we see being done. So, and in terms of progress, we view this as remarkable progress in 4 years, and we view this as a 25-year process, and progress can be made only as we provide support, financial and technical support. And so we're really partners in this, and you guys have been more than holding up your end of the bargain here in terms of doing these projects. So, we appreciate that. That's why we're here tonight, to show that. Our next speaker, the agenda disappeared and I forgot. Chantel Kreider from the Klamath Basin Monitoring Program is here to provide a little bit of background about what that program was about. It's an independent program, and it's not part of the TMDL, but we definitely benefit from their participation in the basin, so we wanted you to hear about that.
Thank you. I'll give them a minute to get organized. So my name is Shasta River. I'm the monitoring plan coordinator for the Klamath Basin Monitoring Program. Is that loud enough?
Okay, Lisa.
And I'm going to talk about one of our program elements, and that's the stewardship reports. And Shasta Valley RCD has volunteered to be our first member organization to be part of the stewardship process. So thank you very much, Shasta Valley RCD. They are our guinea pig in the process. It's kind of a new program element for us. So, the Klamath Basin Monitoring Program is a multi-agency organization. So we have member organizations from Oregon all the way through California to the mouth of the Klamath. And our focus area is the Klamath Basin, so it includes both sides of the border. We have about 300 members, and those are from various monitoring organizations. So that includes nonprofits, for-profits, regulatory agencies, you name it. So we try to represent, well, my job is to represent all membership organizations, and we do that through a multi-agency steering committee and a voting process. So, for example, the stewardship reports was a program element that was introduced by one of our committees and approved by the membership. So it's intended to be well balanced and representative of all the monitoring organizations. So I also help with proposal development. So in the Shasta, I help with certain sections of the 319 to acquire funds for projects in the Shasta. And we also provide communication tools to our members. Our website's available for some of the other agencies to utilize. So there's an outreach component, there's a media wiki, and we also have a newsletter that we send out to our membership. And then, of course, the stewardship report is one of those communication tools where we're sharing success in the basin, in the Shasta in particular, to other parts of the basin so that they can then take advantage of the lessons learned here and implement those projects in their subbasins. So this is the definition that was developed by our membership. And so it's meant to capture ecosystem function, but not an absence of current land uses. So it being a balance between sensitive beneficial uses and current practices on the land. So we work with local leads like the Shasta Valley RCD and in communication with learning their outreach activities and what's been successful. And then we document those and then share those with our membership. So where we fit into the key to success, which is restoring ecosystem function, is to play a part in the regulatory process in a non-regulatory role. So the stewardship report is a non-regulatory tool. It's meant to be informative and to share successes and lessons learned throughout the basin. And we accomplish that through the not only our mechanisms on our website, but also through our membership meetings and help write newsletter articles for other RCDs in other areas. So, as I said, the stewardship is intended to be basin-wide, and we're going to be using our communication tools to help spread the word of all the success we've had here in the Shasta Basin, and then also reach out to folks that are interested in pursuing these stewardship actions and providing them with resources. So one of the ways that we're going to be providing resources to other subbasins is through another program element of ours that's newly evolving, which is the climate tracking and accounting program, and it's going to help with offsetting the cost of participating in stewardship actions. So you can imagine, for an example, somebody's putting in a riparian fence and it's fencing off a particular area that might be grazed, and so there are mechanisms to provide the landowner with financial incentives to offset the cost of the stewardship action. So meaning, rather than it being completely excluded, it's counted as an ecosystem benefit to the system, and they are compensated financially for participating. So walking through the entire process, it's an adaptive management process that's meant to be cyclical. I'm not trying to hypnotize you or anything with this diagram, but it's intended to, each stewardship report begins from a collaborative approach where we are helping the local lead form partnerships. So partnerships with their fellow organizations that they don't have a relationship with, Department of Fish and Wildlife, for example, already, then we help facilitate that so that we're having a comprehensive view of conditions on the ground by utilizing what Department of Fish and Wildlife is monitoring, what RCD is monitoring, so we have a basin-wide understanding of current water quality conditions. And then from there, we're able to identify water quality issues of concern like dissolved oxygen and temperature elevation, and implement solutions like tailwater return projects, and then evaluate those processes like looking at the dissolved oxygen over time and make adjustments as needed. And then we go back to step 3 and repeat until you're seeing ecosystem function benefits. So this is just an example of what we've done so far for the Shasta, and this is a priority action diagram, and this was generated by feedback from the RCD and other members in the Shasta, and documents, both regulatory documents and reports, free literature, and it's meant to kind of show by priority class where certain actions fall. So, for example, for tailwater return, it's obviously under temperature. So this will be part of the stewardship report that will be available on our website. And so I just wanted to leave you with our website, and of course we'll be, having an announcement when the stewardship report is available for everybody to look at online, and we'll be communicating that through the Shasta Valley RCD. Any questions? Okay. Cool. Thanks.
Thank you, Chantel. As part of
I
that,
usually have applause at these meetings.
as part of that, she mentioned that the stewardship report, what we're doing is conducting an inventory of all the stewardship projects that have been conducted within a reasonable time frame. We haven't actually decided what that time frame should be, because it's important to understand, what have we done, what have we accomplished. And so, for example, the city of Wairika has nominated their Greenway project as one of the projects they'd like to have listed in the stewardship report in that inventory. And we're going to show those stewardship projects by reach, so that somebody can pick it up and say, well, what have people been doing in the Shasta to improve conditions? It'll be readily available in a map format with projects listed within a reach, and you'll be very clearly see the good work that's been done to improve conditions. So that's the kind of communication that can be really important to demonstrate to people that you're making progress, and also in applying for funds. That you guys are serious and you've really done a lot of good work. There's lots left to be done, but money has been put to good use. So that's kind of the communication that Chantel was talking about, that kind of effort can support. So with that, right now we're going to move on from the stewardship project. Andy's going to discuss the questions that, Grace, I think you were addressing, kind of the status of the TMDL and the waiver program. Andy, I'll get your slide up real quick.
Big crowd here tonight. Yeah, I've been working with, I think everybody knows me here, but probably kind of speaking to the choir. I've been out with you or talked to you on the phone and worked upon your properties. And anyway, I'm going to go through what we're doing now and update you, even though you probably already know. Next. So one of the things that people like Lisa and I do, and the RCD, is we have to provide regular updates and progress reports to our board, to EPA, to others. I have to do a lot of written reports, and we provide everybody with pretty positive reports on improving water quality. And the ranchers have really stepped forward. One of the things I do is I manage grants. I work with Lisa and different people. And people want to know what the results are. Are they good? Are they bad? And we have provided so many people, government people, with positive reports, because there's been a lot of good work done here. And, we already brought that up. But, here we go.
Oh, sorry. There you go, sorry.
I'm going to move into the conditional waiver. It's been going on 7 years since we adopted the TMDL, and we had the first waiver, and it's been reevaluated, and there's actually a brochure that you may get over there that shows some of the progress. Next. So when we went to our board after 5 years to renew the waiver, they had to consider whether they needed to renew it, take different actions, something more restrictive. And because we gave them positive feedback, they chose to renew the existing waiver for another 5 years. So this waiver that we adopted last October is going to go to the year 2017. I probably won't be here, I'll be retired, but we'll see. So in order to comply with the conditional waiver, you have to employ these land stewardship practices to minimize your tailwater, to protect the riparian, and try to work together and increase good cold water during critical periods when the salmon need it. So under the old waiver, you had to do those reports. They were kind of funky, annual reports, and submit them. And we helped you with them because we went to our board and said, this is what's happening. And now we only require submittal of annual summaries or reports or development of ranch plans if requested by the executive officer. We're not trying to reach everybody like we were before, because that didn't work very well. So one of the things you have to do is allow us access to your property so we can do an assessment. I think I've done a few people here already, and already talked to others. I think most of you guys, you guys are going to be like a shoe-in for coverage under the new conditional waiver because you're doing all the things that you need to do, meeting all the conditions. So there's another program where there's a third-party verification of waiver management practices, the bottom bullet. And I'm not going to be involved in that. That's going to be some kind of third-party thing that's part of the K-Bump or K-TAP. Clayton, if you want to chime in here, because I'm not sure.
What Andy means is that the board recognizes that inspections could be an obstacle to making progress on the waivers if it requires some kind of government evaluation of your stewardship practices. And so with the emergence of Climate Tracking and Accounting Program, which is an independent program, non-government, it's nonprofit, they have people who are trained to certify and verify management practices. And so a non-governmental agency, a third party, can be allowed to fulfill that obligation so that Andy can ride off into the sunset and retire, and someone else can do that certification part of the process. Yeah, Grace?
Do you have a held harmless avenue in your when you're in your monitoring procedures, so that if you go on somebody's property and you see something that isn't quite right or something that needs to be improved, you don't issue some kind of a warning or a ticket or something so that people allow you, give you access better?
What we do is we give them every opportunity we can to work to improve their conditions. And this is a long-term program. They don't have to fix everything right away, but as long as they come up with a plan, we'll probably ask them for a ranch plan. And then, they'll have to implement that plan. But as far as taking enforcement action, we'd rather avoid that.
And one of the protections of the waiver program is that if you're actively engaged in the process, that you are covered through that, third-party lawsuit. If anybody sues anybody, they sue the regional board because you're actually covered under our waiver program during that period of time. We talked with our attorney about that before we came up here. And so it's one of the protections that is actually offered through, whether it's done with Andy or a regional water board person doing the inspection or the third-party certification. During that period of time, you're covered under the waiver.
Okay.
There?
Yeah. So one of the conditions is that you have to work individually with others to reduce tailwater discharges. If you're in a tailwater neighborhood like Lisa was talking about, you guys have to work together and prevent or minimize tailwater discharges to the river. And also, working together to provide cold water during critical times when the fish need it. That's a community effort that people like Adrian are working on. Do you have anything to say about that, Adrian?
Well, we've had great success. Last year was a pretty dry year, and through working with irrigators, we were able to secure enough water to keep thousands of Chinook healthy in the Shasta River Canyon in September, and I think that was a pretty big feat.
So, and also, we'll recommend that you participate in some of the local assistance programs if that's something that we think is necessary too. So something new about the new waiver is we're not trying to reach out to everybody. We're trying to focus on important areas of critical habitat, like the areas below Grinnell and Parks Creek and Big Springs Creek, where there's already a whole bunch of effort going on in that area. And I think we're all in agreement as far as the people that are working on this, that that's the best thing to do. It's a normal process. You work upstream when you're doing restoration on a river, and you work your way downstream. You clean up what's upstream, and then that benefits what's going on downstream, and you work your way down. The second focus is the Little Shasta River. There's a lot of good habitat up in the Little Shasta River. One of the problems is the fish can't get up there because at certain times of the year when they migrate, there's not enough water. So, there's studies and stuff that we're working on that.
Say it what it is, Andy. There's no water. Not most years, every year. You're being diplomatically correct.
So then our last focus will be the downstream areas. And hopefully when we work on the upstream areas, those areas will improve. So if you're applying for assistance, this is how some of the things are going to be prioritized based on where you are. If you're in high habitat areas, your likelihood of getting assistance from our grants is reduced. So I actually manage the grants. Lots of money. And these are the grants we're working on right now. One Lisa and Karen, and Karen's managing the Riparian grant that's just come online. We have contracts and so forth too. And one thing that was kind of remarkable that happened is we got 2 huge 319 grants approved for the upcoming year. We got the lion's share of the money here because people know that things are happening here, that there's a lot of improvement in water quality as a result of everything you and everybody else is doing. And there's lots of partners. We don't get much credit. I mean, we shouldn't get much credit, but we do get, we're just a piece of the puzzle. So, this is the thing that Chantel and Clayton are working on. I don't know, maybe you should talk about it.
Sure. So part of this is, being able to secure the funding is there's 2 sides to the equation. Is when Chantel mentioned adaptive management, what adaptive management is, it's you measure your inputs, the management inputs. What were these projects expected to achieve? So Lisa's been able to show with certain types of tailwater projects, and pretty soon we'll be able to estimate from proposed tailwater projects, just what is the reduction in tailwater returns that we can expect. And so Klamath, one thing we've done a very bad job of, all agencies, is account for and track how we've spent our management input money to make improvements. So when it comes time to very clearly say, here's what we've done, here are the expected outcomes, now let's compare that to what's actually happening. And so we're really putting an emphasis, some rigor into doing a better job of accounting for how and where we've spent the money. And so when I mentioned the stewardship inventory project, what we're doing is documenting where good projects have been done, where projects have been done. And so the Climate Tracking and Accounting Program is an independent effort, and will be, this is throughout the Klamath Basin really. And we also assign credits to projects once we've learned how to estimate either the nutrient reduction or the organic matter reduction or the temperature improvements, and those credits have value. And they can actually help to, by selling them, those environmental credits, you can fund projects. So we're looking to develop a market for good projects. And there's a lot more that goes into this. There'll be more, another opportunity to, Chantal?
Well, I just wanted to mention real quick that through another funding source, we were able to hire a KTAP coordinator, and she actually will start in August. And her focus area is the Shasta. So you'll be having other opportunities to hear more in-depth description of KTAP and what's available through KTAP.
It's essentially creating a market-based approach, but it is also valuable information for documenting what's been done and did it have the effect, comparing against improved dissolved oxygen conditions. And if it didn't, let's try something else. So that's essentially what it is. It's managing our projects smarter.
Thanks, Clayton. So Adrian's going to talk about the transaction,
Go back.
water transaction.
Sorry. Oh yeah, sorry.
So one of the actions that was brought out in our TMDL plan was the development of a water trust. And we have not developed that program yet, and trying to find funding for that has been difficult. But working with Amy Campbell and the Nature Conservancy, we actually did the very first transactions this spring. And we noticed that the river conditions were pretty dire. We did not have very much water, and we had a lot of Chinook young fish that were out migrating this spring. And so I think the total ended up to be over 6 million. One of the things that we could see was on April 1st, if everybody turned on their irrigation, the river would just bottom out. That could cause fish to be stranded and die, especially down in the canyon. So as an experiment, Amy worked with 3 different entities and purchased some water this spring, and we monitored that, and then we tried to ramp the river down slowly so that it just didn't dump on April 1st. So we think that that was a good success. It was a great, pilot to try to actually do some water transaction deals and get that going. So we're actively trying to look for additional money and then at some point develop an actual water trust that would handle transactions.
So this would apply to the fall run that is expected in a couple of months.
Could potentially.
Oh, potentially. There's a lot of fish out in the ocean. And we don't know how many are going to come. Maybe more than we had last year, who knows?
What they're saying, just to give people an update, we will be getting our flow groups together, but they're saying that pre-harvest, that the climate system could see 270,000 Chinook. We have bigger fish this year. There are a lot of 4-year-olds. And of that, the Shasta River could see about 20,000 fish, which is somewhat less than last year, but then bigger fish. So I'm not really sure how we're going to get through September, but we're going to give it a shot anyway. See if we can keep these fish healthy.
So as part of this effort under Climate Tracking and Accounting Program, the way this relates is there's a model that's being developed by Mike Diaz of Watercourse Engineering that evaluates things like water trust transactions either through flow, through shading, or tailwater return flow projects to evaluate temperature improvements based on which of those management actions could most cost effectively achieve the desired effect. So that's one of the tools that's currently under development with climate tracking and everything.
So you already heard we had a huge run last year. And we think it's a result of the collaborative efforts of everybody, like you guys, and we want to thank you. All those who participated in whatever program it is, and we hope the improvements in water quality continue. Thanks.
Thanks.
And next is my last slide.
I'm sorry.
Pass the word if you want me to work with you. I hope you guys found the experience working with me an honest, good-hearted experience, because I'm really dedicated to protecting water quality and working with all of you, and I really enjoyed working with each and every one of you. So thank you. Any questions? Don?
We have a question about the waiver. As I understand, that will, for the next 5 years, that'll protect everybody in the Shasta watershed.
Yeah, I think one thing I didn't mention, I think it was on the slide, was that our program will have the same goals or will exceed the new North Coast Ag waiver that they've been working on for the last few years. So I think we're going to be stuck with the Shasta conditional waiver. We won't have to deal with the Ag waiver. We'll be covered because it has the same goals and we have a successful program. So there's no sense in tampering with it. Could that answer your question?
Yeah.
I think, and also I think there was another aspect of this question, Andy, that if you're enrolled in the waiver, it protects you as long as you're enrolled. So all those who enroll are protected by the waiver.
So everybody will need to enroll to be protected.
That's right.
Okay.
And those conditions, those procedures that Andy talked about, stepping through those with him.
I think I missed the slide.
No, you had it.
And if I
Go back a couple.
if I was a gross polluter in the stream, you would still sign me up?
Hell no!
We got a special list to sign you up on.
Yeah.
Who's eligible?
Go forward.
You kind of
Go
said,
forward. I missed the slide. Go forward.
That's it.
Oh, benefits.
There
There
we
we
go.
go. That's what, did I skip that one?
You might have.
Maybe in my head I did, you guys. Anyway, these are the benefits. You don't need a permit. Meets the Ag waiver goals. Increased grant funding opportunities. We already talked about all this, so I don't remember seeing the slide, but I guess we covered it all. So a lot of benefits.
So I think the question was, who's eligible? Everybody.
Everybody's eligible as long as they're working to control their tailwater, protect the riparian, working to increase cold water. It's pretty basic, you know, it's not like, but you know, the people that aren't going to be, like Don was mentioning, eligible are the people that aren't working and
following good stewardship.
yeah, following good stewardship practices and blowing us off and not working with the community.
Adrian had a comment.
Adrian.
So review how they would get their certification. Review how they would get their certification, what you're doing out for your field.
Oh, yeah. As some of you already know, I'm going out and doing assessments, and I'm working with Ann, and she's going to talk about that next. A lot of people have already gotten ranch plans, which is a great idea. I really recommend getting ranch plans. I've been going out and looking at the ranch plans on the property. It doesn't stay with me, I just review them there. It's your own ranch plan, and I don't want any part of it other than I want to review it. And it really expedites things, because, you know, there's maps, and it shows what the landowners want to do, what they've done, and all the progress they've made, and it's been really great. And so we're going to certify you people that have participated, and you're going to get a letter, if you haven't already got one, saying you're covered, you're enrolled in the program, no permit needed.
On, like for Lisa does these projects, you have to get 401 permits for your project?
Some of them. Depends.
And I was wondering, will Lisa have to, that doesn't give her the opportunity to bypass a 401, she's told may have to do that on her projects? No?
I'll still have to get a 401.
Still have to get a 401?
Yeah. This is a
Oh,
waiver,
yeah.
this is a waiver for TMDL.
Yeah.
So here's another brochure in answer to that last question, that what you need to do to comply. So they're on the table.
And how does this conditional waiver apply, or does it apply to branch properties that, one, don't have tailwater, and two, do not have riparian property?
Well, you probably don't even need a permit or a waiver. So I would go out and say, well, you're not impacting, you don't have livestock grazing in the stream, you don't have tailwater, you're not diverting water to detrimental debris or whatever. So those people will just, they'll be covered, but, I won't really have to deal with them, They'll just call me, and I might go out and check and say, okay, you don't need to do anything.
What about somebody in a water district who has a lot of tailwater and they're not on the stream, the tailwater dumps on the next property owner and then gets to the stream?
Good question.
Well, that's a case where they have to, work with their tailwater neighborhood. So if they're not cooperating, then they're not covered. Even if they might be 3 properties up above the river, if they're dumping a whole bunch of water and it's going to the river and they don't want to do anything, then they won't be covered.
But because they're just in the district, they're not on the stream, and would they even?
Well, if they don't
know to
care
ask for them?
and they're just wasting water and they're dumping it and it keeps going, even if it's not they're coming off their property directly into the river, and they don't want to work with the neighborhood, then they won't be covered.
And Don, I think the intent of your question is does someone who is not immediately adjacent to the river, but who has
Right.
water that does make it eventually to the river, have some liability
Right.
relative to, yes, they do. And
Yes.
so they would need to be covered under the waiver program by participating in the practices that Andy.
Or is this something you'd probably be working with that water district rather than all the little individuals?
More efficient to work with the district-wide
Yeah.
approach. And so that's the preference, but we will work with individual landowners too, if that's their preference.
And we'll give them, like I said, every opportunity to correct the problem. We'll recommend, you could sign up with the RCD for the tailwater program and see how you fit on the priority list. But they also need to do good management practices, like, check, is it 2 o'clock? You go down there and you need to check, see if the tailwater's going to the river or wherever it's going, and turn it off. If you have a time frame, that's kind of part of a management plan. Okay, this is when I normally have to go check. So it's 2 o'clock, I need to go check, make sure it's not going downstream. Part of a management plan, branch plan, and that's going to segue into our next speaker. Any more questions? Thanks.
Who's our next speaker?
Thank you, Andy. And now down to the nuts and bolts of it. Ann has been working with you all for years, and so she needs no introduction, and we're going to learn something about exactly how these ranch plans work.
everybody. I think most everybody knows about the ranch planning because Andy described it so well. So I'm not going to really dwell on it too much, except just to say that it's a great opportunity for me, retired, to still get out in the field. I love it, and I thank everybody very much for that. I always learn something new. Everybody's got something to share, and everybody has a project that they've never really described before. Every time I get out on a ranch, even if I've been there before, I always end up hearing about some new great idea that somebody wants to share with me, and it's wonderful. So this part of this presentation was from February, and I'll just kind of whip through these first few slides. If you don't live in Shasta Valley, I can still do ranch planning with you. We're focusing on Shasta Valley. And tonight I'd like to talk a little bit about grazing management and riparian pasture grazing. So this is one of the big reasons why we're doing this, is to try and explain to each individual landowner how the tailwater reduction plan affects their ranch. And it's been really important because people in this county learn by one-on-one conversation. That is the number one way that information is transferred around here. So anytime you can reinforce an idea or have that conversation around a kitchen table with somebody, even though they've been to a meeting or they've heard about it 6 times, they still have a question: how does this affect me? What is my neighborhood? What color is my neighborhood? What does it really mean? What is my number? So I really find that this is a really big part of ranch planning, is just to be able to do the educational piece about the tailwater. And everybody wants to see where their map is and how their map stacks up with everyone else's. And Lisa, you didn't mention that, but you're getting ready to put your maps on.
Yeah,
You want
they're
to
gonna be interactive.
say that? Or say something about that? Because that's going to be awesome.
This map, a watershed map, will be on the Shasta Valley RCD's website, where you'll be able to click on where you are, and it'll say if you're high priority or low priority, medium priority, but it'll also give the strategies that are outlined in this reduction plan that we put together, that says, oh, that if you're in this area, then you should focus on efficiency or collection, or there's, it has some stipulated like best management practices to deal with tailwater. So it'll be an interactive map.
And that's another part of the ranch plan, is some of the information from what best management practices are needed. That ends up in a guy's ranch plan specifically for their piece of property. What practices should they be looking at if they decide they want to do something? Okay. And this just explains about the management, and the planning goes together with everything else that we've been hearing about tonight, projects and monitoring. The landowner has to bring the management to the table. That is number one, to make everything fit together. And planning is just one little aspect of the big piece too. Okay. So this is just tells you guys what is needed if you really wanted to do one. I don't have to do it in this order. And also I want to say that Andy has explained to me that you don't need a ranch plan to be in compliance and to have the waiver, the good guy letter, I call it. I've been out with Andy several times, and we've gone to see some people that have ranch plans and some that do not. And if they are keeping track of their projects, and if they're aware of the opportunities they have to contribute to the overall efforts, a ranch plan is just one tool. So it's not required unless Andy says it's required. So you're doing the right thing, and you just don't have a ranch plan, but you have another way of displaying, like a range map or just your own list or your own spreadsheet. Is that right? That's what you said to somebody.
Like I said, it has to go to the executive officer to require it.
Right.
But I encourage everybody to have one.
Right.
I mean, it may not be very complicated. It might be really simple, like you got to turn your tailwater off before it gets to the river, or something like that. But it makes you look like you're making a good faith effort, and I encourage everybody to get one.
Okay. You heard it from the guy that knows.
But some people, they already have their own ranch plans, and they got everything under control.
That's what I was.
Like Don, he didn't need one. Yeah.
Okay, go ahead. Okay, so this is just my slide to describe the tailwater neighborhoods. The way I use it in the range planning process is very valuable. Big part of why I do range planning. And so it's your plan, it's voluntary, these things are all still true. Tell your neighbors it's not gonna hurt to have one. It's actually kind of like having a will or a safe deposit box. At this point in time, it's just a good place to write down all your ideas, keep track of what you've done, what you plan to do, a little bit of a roadmap. And the reporting mechanism, that isn't even really accurate anymore. It should say to provide a convenient mechanism for Andy to look at your ranch plan. So, or see what you're doing. That's good. And it was originally based on RangeMac. I think everybody here probably knows that. RangeMac was a program in the 90s that California Cattlemen's Association helped develop it with extension, and the fact sheets are awesome. I still use them in my ranch planning. And Blair's going to add to it. Yes?
Yeah. Well, I spoke with Andy a couple of weeks ago about getting this done. We're one of those original people that put together that range map plan. I don't know how many meetings that we attended with Randy Sealbree,
Right.
Cooperative Extension, putting those plans together.
Mm-hmm.
Do those suffice for the conditional waiver?
Are you asking me or Andy?
Both of you.
I would say it's a great starting point. If somebody showed me a range map plan today, I probably would say, let's update it. Here's a couple pages you can throw in there.
It's about that thick?
There's nothing in there about tailwater neighborhoods, I can guarantee you that. And range map covered a lot of ground that was dry land. So there was a lot of emphasis on runoff and erosion control and things like that, which are all still great. But I would say that anybody who has a range map plan in Siskiyou County could update it. Yep. Okay. This is kind of a new twist. We're going to try to work a little bit more on grazing and riparian areas. We are very interested in making sure that people that have fencing projects are given the opportunity to discuss whether they can graze or not. Now, there are fencing projects that were put in with funding that has exclusion contracts, and those we have to honor. There are also projects that were done more than 10 years ago by Fish and Game, and those fencing exclusion contracts have expired. There's several other programs, CCRP, for example, where there was fencing exclusion and funding paid for it that have also expired in general. So what we're trying to do is work with our board and the water board to make sure that people are given an opportunity to graze in a riparian pasture if it makes sense. So we are offering that as sort of an add-on to a ranch plan, or they could just have a grazing plan and they don't have to have the whole ranch plan. But we'd like to look at anything that's got plantings, has to be handled specifically, and new planting for sure, 3 years exclusion. The reason why we're looking at this is because when I first started working on tailwater, the catchphrase was tailwater or no water, which do fish want? That was always the joke. And so now we're farther down the road where we have tailwater, but we'd like to cool it off. So we reduce the tailwater, and we're going to keep some of that tailwater out of the river, but the water that is going to still run off a flood irrigated field and go back to the river, which there is still going to be some, we would like to do everything we can to make sure that riparian pasture is filtering and functioning, doing the most uptake it can to be in the most vigorously growing condition that it can be in order to help cool the water so that it doesn't run over the top of the ground, that it goes down into the ground and back into the river in a cooler state. And that's the purpose of a grazing plan in a riparian pasture. And we feel that we can do some really beneficial things with that concept. Yes. Okay, and so we're going to have some field trips. The first one is next Tuesday. Anybody wants to go on a field trip? We took our board of directors on a few months ago, and it was very beneficial. It'll just be from the road. It's like a rubbernecker tour. Anybody from the public is welcome. You can sign up over there, and we'll just do a morning. Lisa's gonna help organize and direct the tour, and we'll look at tailwater projects in the Shasta Valley from the road. We're not gonna do, you know, lots of driving on people's property, because we don't know who's gonna sign up, and we don't wanna take everybody's time. So that's number one. The second thing is, we're gonna actually have a how does grass grow field trip, and we're gonna go to the Novi Ranch, and retired NRCS Richard King is gonna come up, and we tried to get that pastor guy that came to Steve Orloff's seminar, because he was so awesome the way he talked about grass, but he was unavailable. So Richard is great, and he will provide us with the same hands-on discussing how do we get the most out of our riparian pasture for water quality and also weed control and all the other benefits that can be got from doing a good job of grazing in the riparian area. Then, I was supposed to say two more things. Bill Campo and Hunter's Orchards are putting together another grass and profitability workshop that's going to focus more on soil health. And that's going to be on the 10th of September. And it's, again, open to the public. They're going to do a whole day. They've got Cindy Daly coming from Chico, and they've got Bob Rutherford from Cal Poly are going to come, and they're going to do some soil quality testing and an NRCS soils guy. So that's on the 10th of September. So ours is on the 4th, and then the second one's on the 10th. The fourth thing I'm supposed to mention is that Amy Campbell is working with Steve Orloff on a fall flows study similar to what they did in Scott Valley in the past, looking at different cutoff dates. And of course, this is a crazy year for cutoff dates because a lot of people have already gotten cut off. But Steve and Amy are still looking for participation in their study. They're going to try to look at what the forage benefits or negatives would be from various cutoff dates in September, probably starting September 1st for irrigation cutoff dates and how it affects your grass. So anybody wants to sign up, they can call us, or they can call Steve or call Amy. They're always looking for a few more places to do that. And I think that's it, unless anybody has any questions for me. Thank you.
Now, we only have 3 more speakers. No, that's it for tonight. We welcome you we'll be here for a while. If anybody has wants to stay around and ask questions informally, we'll be here for a while because we have a little project meeting that we're going to be trying to attend to for a moment. But I hope we were able to demonstrate that we really do believe we're making progress. I think the most important thing is that projects that we know have a logical connection to improvements are being done. We can see from monitoring that it is variable and it takes a long time to interpret the monitoring, but we believe we're seeing a signal already that signifies improvement and that money is being well spent. And I hope you heard that we really appreciate your efforts on the ground to make all this happen. And then I'll just ask Adrian, have I overlooked anything, or is there anything else you'd like to add?
I don't think so.
Grace?
Are you sharing your documentation and your information with other agencies?
Yes. As a matter of fact, one of the purposes of the stewardship report is to ensure that we don't stumble over each other anymore, that we are working actively. I mean, when I say actively, I mean we are meeting around the table and saying, where are your stewardship projects? Where are yours? What monitoring data do you have? And we're consolidating all of that into one place in this stewardship report so that there's no contradictions, there's nothing left out, that everybody's informed by the same basis of information. And so that is what we believe to be one of the key benefits of this stewardship process is collaborative process, getting everybody on the same page, and not only with agencies, But as Chantel has really emphasized, and she has the skill set to do, is, and I know not everybody's on the web, but this is going to be on the web, and it's going to be a wiki document. What that means is that people will be able to regularly update that. People who have, Chantel, you may want to explain that, because I'm not sure I completely have it, the wiki process, and
Yeah, so
who will
just-
have access.
Just like Wikipedia, anybody can edit it. So, so we have, like I said, over 300 members in it from a variety of organizations. So it's meant to be a living document that can be updated as frequently as you'd like. I mean, obviously there's a moderator, so you're not getting people posting crazy stuff, but it's meant to be as up to date as a document can be. So that includes multimedia. So if you have a video of a tour that you just went on, or you have some imagery of a project that was just completed, or you have some documentation regarding a project and its great results, that can all be uploaded and it's in one place, and people can utilize it as a tool for informing themselves and other people regarding stewardship activities in the planet.
And so we're striving for inclusiveness, and we're striving for transparency, because we recognize that that's important. And Chantel will be managing that as part of the K-Bump program, the website.
And there'll also be a monitoring plan in the stewardship report too, in the appendix. You want to talk about that?
There'll be an appendix. One thing we've done and one thing we've identified, I know you all probably, I'll just take a short brief time to do this, but one of the things we're inventorying is all of the data collection that's gone on. Lisa's done an incredible task of that with her projects. When we documented wherever information has been collected on the river, and there were well over 50 sites, and it's not well coordinated. And so what we're trying to do, Grace, is not only share information about what we have, but our information collection, so that we can make more efficient. We can reduce the number of sites. We can share the burden of collecting information. We all go through the same data management procedures, the same quality assurance procedures, so that all of that is coordinated across agencies and entities that are collecting information within the basin, and that it's combined together so that we have a more comprehensive record of conditions. Because you really need to look at the whole picture and how all the pieces are fitting together. That we're making improvements in those tailwater neighborhoods that are in the upper parks, and we're working our way downstream. We want to be able to demonstrate that comprehensively and consistently. There's some of the data that's been collected we've had to throw out because their temperature and DO probes weren't well maintained, and you can tell by the way they behave. And so we want to bring more consistency to how we actually collect information. It's part of that adaptive management. We're spending money and a lot of hard work to make things better. So let's monitor and demonstrate that improvement. And with Lisa's project, you can see the value in that. You can see that dissolved oxygen, and to some extent temperature, is benefiting from this project. So the monitoring plan that will be an appendix to the stewardship report will describe how we've been able to coordinate the efforts of all the entities that are collecting information and present it to the public in a more consistent and a more quality assured fashion. Is that, Chantal? So with that, thank you for your time tonight and attention and your questions and all your efforts. Appreciate it.